World premiere. Finally, a mountain bike video. Many of you have requested this in the comments. This doesn't depend on me, but on the brands. We need to let them work to develop, but we do have a very interesting bike here. The Pivot Match for SL, an American niche brand, is interesting for different reasons. The first reason is this, is a brand that maybe we don't really have on our radar here in Spain, among other things, because it's an American niche brand. Their cross-country bike versions are usually more like a light trail bike and not so much a competition cross-country bike. In this case, with this specific model, Pivot makes it very clear that this is a 100% competition bike because they've optimized everything related to carbon laminates. Did they end up tweaking the geometry a bit? I'll tell you more in a moment, but keep in mind that even though it's a niche American brand, this is a 100% World Cup mountain bike weapon. All right, so what do we have here? Well, to start, we've got 120 millimeters of travel in the front. We have a flip chip right here on the linkage, which with a quick adjustment lets us switch between 110 or 120 millimeters. The 110 should be for an even more optimized feel of the terrain, and the 120 millimeters obviously for tackling rougher courses. The main issue lies in the suspension system. And this is another very interesting point because Pivot still trusts its eternal DW link with a completely solid rear triangle, a system that uses two linkages. And on paper, it should give us, as I said, a very good feel for the terrain and above all, brutal anti-squat. And I say this is very interesting because you've seen it. In recent times, many brands have switched to single pivot, even coming from complex systems like this one. And I honestly celebrate the Pivot stands its ground and says, no, no, I'm not going down that road. I'm not switching to single pivot. I'm not going to make my bike, in quotes, just another one. Even aesthetically, many of them look alike. Instead, they want to keep this system no matter what, which has given such good results so far. It's all true, and well, it has to be said that in the battle against the scale, these more complex types of systems are good. They've lost the battle because the single pivot is much lighter. Just so you know, we're talking, according to the brand, about 2,500 grams for a size M frame kit, which also includes the bolts and the shock absorber. I weighed this bike just as it comes from the factory, of course, without the pedals. Well, not including the pedals because bikes are sold without pedals, with the power meter, with the tubeless fluid, with everything you see here. The weight isn't quite as competitive as a single pivot, but anyone who has tried this DW Link or Mondraker's Zero system, or for example BMC's system, also with a double linkage and a solid rear triangle, knows that the performance of the rear suspension of the bike and overall handling are a whole different story. They have nothing to do with a single pivot. So, well, there's always that balance where the end consumer has to choose whether to prioritize weight or performance. But anyway, I have to say, I'm glad there are brands that keep distancing themselves from the single pivot and stick to their guns. That said, the geometry has been optimized. We're talking about a 66-degree head angle, 75 degrees on the seat tube, so much steeper than the previous model. As I said, niche American brands usually have seat tube angles that are even slacker, so they're more relaxed. And it's harder to be efficient when pedaling with those bikes that seem more like trail bikes. Here, that's not the case. Here we already have 75 degrees. The reach has only been lengthened by about 5 millimeters. It is not an especially long bike. In fact, if we compare it with other bikes from the competition, you'll see that we're more or less in the same range as the current standard geometry bikes. Then there are others like maybe Mondraker or BMC that have much longer reaches. And I really recommend this type of geometry for people who have, let's say, compact or short limbs compared to their torso, which is my case, okay? Maybe people who have longer limbs compared to their torso feel better with more progressive geometries, but this type of geometry for people with short limbs feels really, really good. Another major change is the bottom bracket. They've raised it a little bit, always trying to avoid those hits against rocks and roots that are always uncomfortable. Well, we have the possibility to carry something very important, because surely many of you have seen the shock absorber placed vertically. Have you thought about it? It can only carry one bottle, it can't carry two, so you have three mounts on the top tube, and then there are two more mounts for a bottle directly on the trunk lid. Okay, the trunk is another great new feature that this new model brings. A trunk that is very, very well designed because you can store cargo along the entire down tube and all along the inside of the down tube. Agenos and already the bicycle. The truth is that I really liked it a lot. It's very, very well made. It has two bags inside, so you can carry a lot of things, not just tools, but I don't know, energy bars, whatever you really feel like. Another detail that I personally really, really like has to do with the internal cable routing, since it enters through the side of the head tube, not directly through the headset. And I know there are a lot of people who care a lot about aesthetics, even though, as you can see here in the front, everything looks really clean and well positioned. But like I said, I prefer that they enter through the side of the head tube because in the long run for maintenance and labor in the workshop, it's going to save money. And honestly, aesthetically, I don't see that much of an advantage. Then it's true that Pivot goes for what would be a classic two-piece setup with a handlebar and a stem. What else can I tell you? Basically, there's a little detail that surprises me. It's very well done, but it surprises me a bit because we're in 2026 and that the rear brake hose runs from the front triangle to the rear on the outside. Well, I don't know if it has exactly to do with the complexity of the suspension system not allowing it to be routed inside or just directly. That Pivot has prioritized the practicality of having a cable that's much easier to handle and guide on the outside. That's all. And I don't like it because I think the standard nowadays in 2026 is for it to be routed internally. But I do have to say that it's very well guided by this little piece you have here. It comes straight out of the lower links bushing, stays very close to the frame, and really doesn't move. I don't think it's going to cause any kind of problems. So even though I'm not totally convinced it's well done, and that's worth mentioning. And in terms of protection, you can see that the frame has very good protection all around the bottom bracket area, and especially at the end of the down tube. Besides all protection aspects, there's also chain protection. Really take a look because this rubber piece usually goes from just behind the chain ring all the way to this part right here. In this case, it not only covers the lower part, but also the entire upper part, but it also goes up to here, okay? And we even have protection on this part of the rear triangle as well. So in this sense, the bike is very well made and very well protected. Well, we're talking about prices that range from 6,200 euros up to 13,000 of this top of the line model, which comes equipped with all the electronics with the full fly attendant system. For the suspension, we have carbon wheels with a 30mm internal width. We have, of course, the entire XXSL group from RAM, and the brakes are the Motif Ult from RAM, which have improved a lot. In terms of feel, with four pistons in each caliper, both front and rear. So what do you think? How does it look to you? Please leave me a rating from 1 to 10 in the comments. What do you think of this bike? Anyway, I'm going to test it out these days, and I'll bring you another video with my impressions. Be happy. Bye bye.